Thanks for joining us this afternoon. I'm Morgan Romero. We are interrupting your programming because city officials are expected to speak at a news conference following that tragic accident near the Jackson Jet Center Wednesday. 3 people died, another 9 people were hurt, 5 of them critically injured, when a hangar under construction on Boise Airport property near the Jet Center collapsed. We're waiting for officials to provide their update, but we do want to tell you today we did learn the name of those victims. The Ada County Coroner's Office identifying them as 59-year-old Craig Durrant from Boise, 24-year-old Mariano Coc Och from Nampa, and 32-year-old Mario Sontay Tzi from Nampa. The Coroner's Office says they all died from traumatic blunt force injuries. Our reporter Andrew Bartline is covering this story for us today. He's outside Boise City Hall West, where officials are expected to speak. Andrew, what are we expecting out of this news conference this afternoon?
Well, there's a handful of different organizations that are going to be here, Morgan, speaking and breaking down exactly what transpired as people arrived at this scene to, of course, get these people, the victims' health. As you mentioned, 3 people have died. So we're expected to hear from Boise Fire. The fire chief, Mark Nehmeyer, will be here. Police Chief Ron Weiniger is going to be here as well. We expect to hear from the Ada County paramedics, and also we expect to hear from the Boise Airport director. So these 4 organizations in tandem with each other, helping break down exactly what happened with it. There's still a lot of questions about the victims of this, Morgan, who these people were, trying to gather that information as well. It's unclear if the city is willing to speak to that, what they know and what they will or wouldn't be interested sharing with us in that regard. But alongside with that, it seems that the rescue is a piece that, or the response, I should say, is a significant piece that they will speak to and are prepared to speak to with this, Morgan. So understanding how this broke down, what the timeline was, who responded at what point, to do what exactly, because this was a massive building, 39,000 square feet, a handful of people significantly injured from this as well, Morgan, trying to understand days later what exactly broke down, how that response was conducted. We expect at the very least to get those answers here shortly. There's a couple people from the media rolling in as this is starting to develop, but again, still waiting on those officials from these 4 organizations to come and break it down for us, Morgan.
Boise Fire, when they first spoke on this 2 days ago, calling it catastrophic, saying it was really chaotic and hectic when they arrived to the scene. They said 30 people or so were working at the site. Of course, 12 people were impacted by this. Andrew, we look forward to your report here in a few minutes after that news conference. In a statement from Inland Crane, that was the company there who operated the cranes that were on site at that construction site of the hangar. They sent us a statement yesterday saying the collapse happened due to an unknown structural failure. They say on Monday they had 4 cranes there for construction, but as of Wednesday afternoon, so before that building collapsed, just 1 crane was remaining. That was being used to place an end truss. The crane company says when the hangar collapsed, the crane boom snapped on impact. Of course, this investigation is underway into what exactly caused that hangar that was under construction to collapse. But you can see the vice president of Inland Crane essentially saying reports so far at this time, observations from people that were there on the scene indicate that the crane did not cause this building to collapse, again, calling it an unknown structural failure. The Occupational Safety and Health Administration is leading the investigation into what happened. They took it over from Boise Police. Big D Builders, we know, is the steel construction company that was building that hangar. City permits do show that Jackson Jet Center was building the hangar. Again, it was on Boise Airport property next to the Jackson Jet Center. 7 Investigates learned yesterday, or 2 days ago, I should say, that that company has 7 OSHA violations on other projects in the valley going back to 2014. Important to note, no record of any violations or citations related to this specific site. Those violations were because of fall hazards, which Big D paid the fines and fixed the issues. That's what OSHA told our Abby Davis yesterday. OSHA's Boise area director David Kern says he believes this incident is likely very different than the violations and citations that Big D faced in the past. Take a listen.
Certainly appears that was not the case and that it had something to do structurally. You know, we just basically need to look at every investigation and every case, you know, kind of with a blank slate and you know, really just collect the facts and evidence and base it upon that.
Kern says they have 6 months to issue any citations because of statute of limitations. Again, this is all that he told our Abby Davis yesterday. Because of the complexity of the situation, the large-scale collapse, all that steel, all of the individuals that were there and were impacted, he thinks the investigation will likely take that long. They're going to be out there at the site of the hangar. He says they're going to be conducting interviews, going over any evidence, speaking to anybody who may have any information. And again, they expect that to potentially take the entire 6 months that they have to make that decision on whether they're going to issue any violations or citations against Big D Builders, that steel construction company that was building that hangar for Jackson Jet Center. We reached out to Big D Builders multiple times over the past 48 hours, but we have not heard back. I also want to mention, based on Idaho Secretary of State filings and business filings, I did look up Big D Builders. The Durrant family is the directors of Big D Builders. It appears they own the company, and Craig Durrant, one of the victims, is listed as a director on those Secretary of State filings. And so, we again have reached out to his family members and have not heard back at this hour. So just to recap, we are expecting a news conference. We're going to put up a graphic on your screen of the organizations that we are expecting to hear from. That's Boise Fire, Boise Police, which was leading the investigation into what happened prior to turning it over to OSHA. We are expecting to hear from Boise Airport, as well as Ada County paramedics. These individuals, as Andrew just talked about, are going to speak to their response to their search and rescue efforts. They arrived on the scene, and we want to commend them for getting there so quickly to such a catastrophic event. And there were dozens of police officers, dozens of first responders from all over Ada and Canyon County. Even Garden City Police was there. We know that paramedics from Canyon County were there. Airport individuals were there. Gowan Field folks, people were there. So we know that this was all hands on deck, and that as far as they're saying so far, first responders feeling like they did everything in their power to try to help as many people as possible that were on the ground there. Again, our Andrew Bartline standing by at that news conference as we await to hear from those agencies. Andrew, can you give us another breakdown of what we expect to come out of this press conference? I know OSHA is leading the investigation. These folks are no longer leading the investigation, but they are going to talk about those efforts that I just touched on.
Yeah, as you mentioned, the response to this scene as it developed, and there was a pause here as we expected to hear a little bit earlier for this to happen, but it seems that there was a little bit of a waiting period for some people to step in for this news conference to take place. It seems that that's starting to shake out, so we should just be a couple minutes away until we hear from Boise Fire, Boise Police, Ada County paramedics, and the Boise Airport director as well, how all those organizations work together in tandem to detail what that response was exactly. As you mentioned earlier, the names of those 3 victims who had died from this event, a handful of survivors and people significantly injured. Unclear if there are details we can get from them from this news conference, but there are a lot of questions about these people, kind of the relations of it, and of course, giving the respects to those people where this had happened to them and impacting their families in a significant way. But we do know the breakdown of how this happened, the response to it, that is the expectation, I think, at the very least, that we're hoping to get out of this. I see that there's a spokesperson for Boise Police standing just outside the room. So we know that there are people here ready to get this underway here at City Hall West. Morgan, and you mentioned OSHA taking over this investigation. I believe we reported yesterday, our Abby Davis talking about that can be a 6-month timeline to come to a conclusion about that investigation. And it sounds that they expect that timeline may be exhausted to its entirety because there are a lot of questions about the structural collapse of that building, and the crane company giving that statement to you as well, where I can't remember the exact language they used, but you mentioned it earlier, I think unknown structural failure. And of course that created this scene that needed this large and coordinated response. Those organizations hopefully will break down that response for us here shortly. Morgan.
All right, Andrew Bartline, he alluded to this statement from Inland Crane. They said they were operating at the site. They said it occurred due to an unknown structural failure, but of course it is still under investigation. They said on Monday they had 4 cranes, or excuse me, at the time of the incident that morning, they had 4 cranes there for construction, but as of Wednesday afternoon, just 1 crane was remaining at the site. So they had 4 cranes there earlier. At the time of that collapse, they had 1 crane remaining at the site. That was being used, they said, to place an end truss. The crane company said when the hangar collapsed, the crane boom snapped on impact. If we could bring up some video of that structural collapse right now, of that hangar collapse. You can see in the video that we have, all the video that we've been showing you guys over the last couple of days, that see that crane there, that blue and yellow crane, you can see where that boom had collapsed. And at first, Boise Fire said, we don't know if the crane collapsed onto the building and caused that collapse, or if the building collapse caused the crane to collapse. But again, Inland Crane Company saying that the building collapsed due to an unknown structural failure, and it then caused the crane to collapse. There's been a lot of speculation about that, so that is what we know at this time. But again, that OSHA investigation could take half a year to eventually determine what exactly happened. Occupational Safety and Health Administration leading that. We did learn yesterday, I'll reiterate, Big D Builders, the steel construction company that was building the Jackson Jet Center hangar, has 7 OSHA violations on other projects, not this project, going back to 2014. And if I'm hearing my producer correctly, I do believe that this news conference is about to start. Is that the case? All right, we're going to send it out there now.
Rebecca Hupp, who's the director for the Boise Airport, as well as Sean Rain, the chief of Ada County Paramedics. And joining us possibly later will be Ron Weininger, the chief of the Boise Police Department. Before we begin, we would like to take a moment and send our deep condolences to the families of Craig Durrant, Mario Sontay Tzi, and Mariano Coc Och, who were announced today by the Ada County coroners as the 3 individuals who tragically lost their lives during this event. We would also like to recognize and send our thoughts and our condolences, our prayers to the families of the victims who are still hospitalized as a result of this incident. And we would like to recognize the construction community as well. It's a tight-knit construction community here in the Treasure Valley, and certainly they have been affected by this tragedy. I want to explain a little bit about the fire department response to this hangar event, this hangar collapse that was under construction. This was somewhat unique in that we had an immediate response to this incident. Typically, when an incident happens, it comes through the 911 dispatch center with Ada County, and then our crews get notified. On this particular day and on this incident, our airport rescue firefighters who are stationed at the Boise Airport, if you see our station, it is just to the east of the terminal, were out training that day. So when this hangar collapse occurred, we had crews on scene immediately, and that was a benefit to us because it got immediate response, and we were able to start a plan to meet our priority mission, and that was to assess and get to the victims of this incident and to get them out of the incident zone, out of the collapse zone, and to treatment and ultimately transport to the hospital. We were able to establish that plan immediately. So as our incoming crews arrived, including our technical rescue team, we were able to quickly get access to the victims, get them removed from the danger area and into treatment centers and areas to be ultimately transported. We've been asked quite a bit about how our responders are doing. I want to address that briefly. I mentioned already our mission is to save lives, and unfortunately there are times due to circumstances beyond our control that we cannot meet that mission. This affects our first responders deeply. Yesterday we spent time with all of our responders that responded to this incident. We debriefed the incident, but more importantly we had our fire department peer support team at these meetings with the crews that were involved, helping them to navigate through this. So our peers are taking care of peers. It's something we're very proud of. For today, we won't be able to comment on the cause of this accident. We won't be able to comment on the status of any individuals or victims that are still hospitalized. As you know already, OSHA is leading this investigation. So from the fire department perspective, we are working with OSHA. We will not be able to comment on cause or any speculation as to why this occurred. That will be thoroughly investigated by OSHA. And with that, I would like to introduce Rebecca Hupp, the airport director, to speak on behalf of the airport.
Thank you, Chief Niemeyer, and thank you all for being here today. As the chief said, it did happen on airport property, and as our employees do every single day, they were out doing inspections, ensuring safe operations, and training in collaboration with the aircraft rescue and firefighting team. And so we were able to have people on scene within seconds, which facilitated the joint response, and we're very, very grateful for the response of the fire department, police, Ada County paramedics, and all those who responded on that day. With that, I don't really have anything additional to add. I just wanted to share our appreciation and introduce Chief Rain.
Hello, my name is Chief Sean Rain. I'm the Chief of Ada County Paramedics. First of all, I'd like to echo what Chief Niemeyer said, and express our deepest condolences and prayers for the families of the deceased and those who were injured. From an EMS standpoint, this incident, certainly pushed us to our limits. Within 12 minutes of being notified of the collapse, we had 6 ambulances on scene, along with 4 supervisory personnel. We also received some support from our EMS peers in the community. Canyon County sent over 2 ambulances, as well as a supervisor, and then one private EMS company sent 3 ambulances to the scene. That was acute rescue and transport. We had a total of 8 patients that we transported to area hospitals. Out of those 8 patients, we transported 5 from Ada County Paramedics. Acute rescue transported 2, and Canyon County transported 1 patient. I would also like to just touch on how proud I am of the response to the catastrophe that happened that day. The collaboration between the Boise Fire Department and Ada County personnel really made the incident work as smooth as it could. Finally, Chief Niemeyer spoke to this. These types of calls are very hard on first responders, and so I know we also have a peer support team that has been working with the folks that respond to that call. And I know some of my responders even participated with the Boise Fire peer support team as we were moving forward. So again, my condolences to those who were affected, and I would like to turn it over back to Chief Niemeyer.
Thank you, Sean. Before I take any questions, I will say this. This is an incident that fortunately does not happen very often, but it is an incident, quite honestly, that we collectively train on every day. Our crews are always training for the unpredictable, and Wednesday was unpredictable. But I will echo what Chief Rain said. We have, through our debriefs, have looked at our response, looked at how we operated, and we are very proud of how our firefighters, our paramedics, our police officers operated. I think also in Ada County, you can have comfort to know we work very well together. This was not 3 individual agencies responding. This was a team of agencies responding, and I think that really helped with the ultimate outcome of this that could have been, quite honestly, more tragic. And with that, I would certainly stand to open it up to any questions.
In a situation like this, how do you go about locating and rescuing those individuals that need help?
Yeah, obviously a complex incident when you had a collapse like this, and we had victims in multiple areas. First, we have to assure that we can get in safely, that the building is not going to collapse further. That was the first evaluation done. That happens in a matter of about 30 seconds. And then it's accessing the victims, getting them out of that collapse zone safely, and getting them to a treatment area that we did have set up so that Ada County paramedics, our firefighters, could begin initiating care and ultimately transport.
Could you give us any examples of the obstacles that your men were against and women were going
Right.
against?
Yeah, our firefighters had many obstacles. You had certainly the fear of collapse. And so again, I don't want to repeat, but that is our first evaluation. Can we get in safely without further collapse on top of us? It doesn't do any good if we aren't able to access those victims. And then it's a matter of how do we get them out. This incident was somewhat unique in that we had some of our operations on the airfield side and some of those operations on what we call a civilian or roadway side on Wright Street. So getting to those victims and then getting them to the right location once we remove them from that collapse zone is certainly a challenge, but I think we performed very well.
How critical is that collaboration? I mean, it's not to speak in hypotheticals, but if you're not collaborating, this could have been much worse. And
Absolutely.
You've talked about it multiple times between the 3 of you. So how critical is that?
It's absolutely critical. When you can collaborate on scene like that through multiple different agencies and work as one, which is really how we operated Wednesday, it's very important to the treatment of the victims, to the safety of everyone involved. And certainly, as a nation after 9/11, there was a presidential directive that you shall collaborate, and that was sent throughout the country. And here in Ada County, we took that seriously. We have for years. We train together on a regular basis. So this, for us, was not foreign to come together as one entity almost to get the job done.
You mentioned, fortunately, this isn't something that happens very often. Well, when it does happen, you can't be rusty.
Right.
If you are, bad things happen. So staying in the right mindset to be ready for something like this when it does happen? I can't think of something in 3 years I've lived here that is similar today.
Correct. I haven't seen something like this in the last 15 years, quite honestly, as far as a collapse of this nature. But as I mentioned earlier, we train every day. We have a technical rescue team that also responded that day. Their expertise is exactly what we had, and that is that technical rescue in very unstable conditions. They train every day. Our crews train every day. Ada County trains every day, as well as Boise Police Department. So for us, this was putting our training to work.
How long did it take to get through the full rescue?
Full rescue, I don't have it right in front of me. We can certainly get back to you on that as far as the specific time. I will say, just watching it happen and watching the crews work, it was very efficient and very effective.
There were a lot of lifters in that area, and you mentioned technical rescues. Can you go into any detail about where some of these victims were?
I won't go into any detail on that. That is part of the OSHA investigation, so we certainly won't comment or make speculation. We'll let OSHA do their job on that.
Would you be able to tell us what injuries might be typical of a situation like this?
I think just being very general, in a situation like this, you tend to see a lot of what we call blunt force trauma, meaning something hitting the body, and that's what we classify as blunt force trauma. We see the same thing in car accidents as well. Okay. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
For a second.
Sure.
There's a comment earlier about airport personnel. Like, I don't fully understand this.
Sure.
Excuse me, I don't know what I don't know. There are people that work for the fire department that are at the airport. That collaboration, help me understand that.
There are. So
does that help the immediate response? Right?
at the airport, we have a fire station, and we work very closely with the airport to make sure that our primary mission at the airport is for any aircraft emergencies. That's what they're there. They specialize in airport firefighting operations. So we're there all the time. We're there 24/7. On this particular day, at this particular time, those crews were out at the airfield doing training. So they were in that vehicle, in that apparatus. They weren't sitting in the station. So they were there immediately after the collapse happened.
That's pure luck.
Yes.
Wow.
Luck that they were on the airfield.
I
Yes.
don't know if you're interested in this, but I'd like to talk to Mark the human for a second. Like, what do you feel in your heart about this? Were you boots on the ground? Were you there personally?
I wasn't there personally. We have layers of command that did a great job that were running that incident. Certainly we were communicating, Sean and I were communicating, as well as Chief Weiniger at our level as the chiefs, to make sure that all the operations were running smoothly and that everybody had what they needed to be successful. If you ask me, Mark the human, there's sadness. As a responder, I've been a responder for over 30 years. Chief Rain the same. We've seen tragedy throughout our career, and as a responder, you do feel sadness because we knew that we couldn't affect a positive outcome for everyone. Okay. Thank you, everyone.
And the news conference from Boise Fire, Ada County paramedics, Boise Police, the Boise Airport just wrapped up. That was Boise Fire Chief Mark Niemeyer, who expressed his deep, deep condolences to the families of the people who were killed and injured. We have the names of those victims right now, of the people who were killed. Craig Durrant, if we could put that on the screen for you right now, Mariano Sontay Tzi and Mariano Coc Och and Mario Sontay Tzi. All of those individuals, again, were killed in this tragic hangar collapse. The chief talking about how they set up a peer support team for the first responders that responded to this immediately. He said he is incredibly proud of the work that they did, the collaboration that Boise Fire had with first responders, including Ada County paramedics, as well as Boise Police and all the other surrounding agencies from both Ada and Canyon County that arrived to the scene and helped them out. He said, fortunately, this doesn't happen very often, but they collectively train on these sorts of things every day for unpredictable circumstances. This was certainly very unpredictable. It's important to note that Boise Fire has a fire station at the airport. They specialize in airport and aircraft firefighting, so they're there 24/7. Niemeyer said at this time when that collapse happened, crews were in a vehicle doing their training on the airfield, so they were there right away. He said in addition to that peer support that they did for first responders, he said they looked at the response and they are very proud of how they operated, of how they collaborated with these other agencies. We're going to bring in our Andrew Bartline now, who was there asking questions. Andrew, I appreciated the question that you asked the chief. Mark, as a human, how does this make you feel? And he had told you he hasn't seen anything like this in the 15 years that he has been in the Valley.
Yeah, it was nice to talk to Mark the human for a moment, as you mentioned. You know, these people representing organizations, you have to be buttoned up in a sense and give, you know, that statement that is, you know, straightforward, in alignment, communicate that message. And collaboration seems to be a big part of it from all the people, you know, representing the organizations today. But that statement from Mark the human, you feel sadness. Our job is to save lives. He said that in the press conference as well. And unfortunately, sometimes you can't do that for everyone, and that hurts Mark the human, the fire chief here in Boise. But I do appreciate you highlighting the biggest piece that I took away from that as well, being that there is a fire station at the airport. They were going through training at the specific time this happened. They were already loaded up, ready to go. And I said to him, that's pure luck. He just nodded and goes, yeah, that was pure luck. So a very difficult situation. I don't like to embellish things, but I'm comfortable using the word tragic. 3 people died, and it's pretty powerful that that luck matched up perfectly to seemingly keep the numbers low as they could. Morgan?
It's incredible. All right, Andrew Bartline, thank you. And of course, those 3 individuals killed in that collapse, as well as 9 others injured. At this time, we know 5 of them were critically injured. We know that Ada County first responders, and with the help of other surrounding agencies, transported 8 of those individuals to area hospitals. The fire chief talked about what happens when you get to a scene like this. He said, first and foremost, they get there, they evaluate, they make sure there's no further collapse. They try to get in there safely. He says it doesn't help first responders if you assess something, you don't assess something fully, and then there's further collapse, and then they get injured. So first and foremost, they evaluate, make sure there's no further danger. Then they get to the victims, and their mission is to get the victims out. It was asked by a reporter what obstacles are there. He said, of course, a fear of collapse and just the gravity of this situation. Again, reiterating this word because it's so powerful. He called it catastrophic, or the division chief the other day calling it catastrophic, chaotic when they arrived. But Chief Niemeyer, as well as Ada County Paramedics Chief Sean Rain, saying they were incredibly efficient and effective. They are so proud of the men and women who responded to this massive collapse. Again, Chief Niemeyer saying there is sadness anytime they have a tragedy like this. So on a very human level, they of course want to have a positive outcome for everybody involved. Their mission is to save lives. And in this situation, unfortunately, they were not able to save everybody's life. Rebecca Hupp, the airport director, also came up and spoke briefly. She said employees were doing training with firefighters that day. Andrew just touched on that as well. So they had this incredible joint response to this event, and they had people there immediately. She, of course, expressing her sincere gratitude to everybody who responded as well. Ada County Paramedics Chief Sean Rain also took to the podium, and he said this really pushed them to their limits. He said within 12 minutes of being notified of this collapse, they had 6 ambulances on scene as well as supervisors. They got support from EMS peers all throughout Ada County and Canyon County, including a private ambulance company. Reiterating again, very proud of the response and collaboration by Ada County, Boise Fire, and the airport. These calls just so unique, but this is exactly what they train for. And on a very human level, and I think all of you watching at home, we just want to deeply, deeply thank all of those who responded to this. And we know this will leave a lot of lasting impact and trauma on them as well. And so those agencies are helping them through that. We also want to note those agencies that just spoke are not the ones that are leading the investigation into what happened. OSHA has taken over the investigation. They expect, telling our Abby Davis yesterday, the investigation into what caused this hangar under construction to collapse next to the Jackson Jet Center to take potentially 6 months, which is the time limit they have to file any violations and cite any of the contractors or companies involved. Thank you for joining us. We will have all the latest updates on this just devastating situation on ktvb.com, as well as all of our shows later today and all of our platforms.